That bag of rice sitting in your kitchen cupboard right now, the one you grabbed off the shelf at Tesco or Lidl without a second thought, it might not be as safe as you think. A shocking 2025 investigation tested 145 rice products from stores across multiple countries, and the results should genuinely alarm every household in Ireland. Every single sample contained arsenic. 1 in 4 exceeded the FDA's safety limit for infant food. And it gets significantly worse than that. Cadmium was detected in all but 1 sample. Lead and mercury were found in more than a third of products tested. These are not trace amounts we are talking about. These are toxic heavy metals that accumulate in your body over decades, quietly building up with every bowl of rice you serve at the dinner table. The health consequences are devastating. We are talking about elevated cancer risk, IQ loss in children, brain damage during pregnancy. And here is the truly maddening part. Regulatory bodies have set no limits whatsoever for arsenic in regular rice sold to the general public. Now, you might be thinking, this is an American problem. This does not affect what I buy in Dunnes or SuperValu. That is exactly what the food industry wants you to believe. The reality is that Irish supermarket shelves are stacked with the same international brands caught in these investigations, imported from the same contaminated regions, processed using the same industrial methods, and sold to Irish families who have absolutely no idea what they are consuming. I spent weeks going through ingredient labels, sourcing reports, independent lab results, and EU food safety investigations. What I found will genuinely change how you shop. Today, I am counting down 9 rice brands and products available in Irish supermarkets that you need to seriously reconsider. I will show you exactly which products tested highest for contamination, which companies have faced legal action over their rice, and at the end, I will tell you which rice types are actually safer and give you simple cooking methods that research shows can reduce arsenic by up to 60%. If you eat rice regularly, or if you are feeding it to children, this might be the most important thing you watch all year. Let us get into it. Number 9. Shamrock Pearl Rice. Let us start with one of the most recognizable names in the Irish kitchen. Shamrock is a brand Irish families have trusted for generations. It is stocked in Tesco, SuperValu, and Dunnes stores from Cork to Donegal. The green branding, the familiar packaging, the sense that this is a genuinely Irish product. It all creates a feeling of reliability and local pride. But here is what the Shamrock Pearl Rice label is not telling you, and it matters enormously for your family's health. Shamrock Pearl Rice is a long grain white rice, and like all long grain white rice sold in Ireland, the critical question is not the brand name on the front of the bag. The critical question is where the rice was actually grown and what the heavy metal profile of that soil looks like. Shamrock does not prominently disclose the country of origin on its primary packaging in a way that is easy for shoppers to find and act on. The sourcing of this product has varied over time, and Irish consumers have no reliable way to know from one purchase to the next exactly which growing region their rice came from. The 2025 Healthy Babies. Bright Futures investigation confirmed what EU food safety researchers have been saying for years. Arsenic contamination in rice is not a marginal concern. It is a systemic problem across the entire category. Every single sample tested contained arsenic. The contamination levels in any given bag of rice depend almost entirely on growing origin. Without clear, consistent, and prominent country of origin information on every bag, a trusted Irish brand name like Shamrock offers you no meaningful protection whatsoever. You are relying on a green logo to tell you something it simply cannot tell you, and at the prices Shamrock charges for what is positioned as a quality staple, Irish consumers deserve considerably more transparency than they are currently getting. Number 8. Tesco Basmati Rice. Tesco's own brand basmati is one of the most purchased rice products in Ireland. It sits at an attractive price point. It carries the Tesco name, which millions of Irish shoppers trust, and basmati itself has a reputation as a premium, aromatic rice associated with quality cooking. Parents buy it for family dinners. It is on meal deal promotions. It is the default choice for an enormous number of households, and that is precisely why what I am about to tell you matters so much. Basmati rice has a genuinely better reputation than long grain white rice when it comes to arsenic contamination. Research published by the European Food Safety Authority and confirmed by independent testing organizations shows that genuine basmati from the Indian subcontinent and Pakistan typically tests lower for arsenic than American-grown long-grain rice. So, on face value, choosing basmati sounds like the smarter, safer option. But here is the complication that Tesco's own. Brand Basmati introduces: not all rice-labeled basmati is genuinely sourced from the traditional basmati growing regions of northern India and Pakistan. Tesco sources their own brand basmati under commodity contracts that prioritize price. When the cheapest available basmati shifts origin batch to batch, the heavy metal profile shifts with it. Without independent testing data being published for each production run, Irish consumers have no way of knowing whether the bag they are buying is genuine low-arsenic Punjabi basmati or a cheaper substitute from a higher contamination region labelled as basmati. The EU has regulations designed to protect the authenticity of basmati, but enforcement has been inconsistent, and multiple investigations across Europe have found rice fraudulently labelled as basmati, containing blended or substitute varieties. Tesco Ireland does not publish independent arsenic or heavy metal testing results for their own brand basmati rice. For a supermarket chain that controls a significant portion of Irish grocery spending, that lack of transparency is not acceptable. The Tesco branding creates consumer trust. That trust should come with accountability. Number 7. India Gate Basmati Rice. India Gate is one of the most widely sold basmati brands in Ireland. You will find it in Asian food stores, international grocery shops, Super Value, and Dunnes stores. The branding is premium. The packaging is distinctive. The brand is positioned as authentic Indian basmati and commands a price that reflects that premium positioning. Irish consumers choose India Gate specifically because they believe they are getting genuine, high-quality rice from a trusted source. And here is where it gets complicated in a way the brand would rather you not examine too closely. India Gate is produced by KRBL Limited, one of the largest rice processing companies in the world. KRBL operates at a scale that is difficult to comprehend. They process hundreds of thousands of tons of rice annually. At that industrial scale, the promises on the packet, authentic, aged, premium, begin to come under strain. Aging rice properly requires time and careful storage. Industrial-scale aging is a very different proposition to the traditional methods the brand's marketing evokes. But the more serious concern is this: India Gate sources rice from the Indo-Gangetic plains of northern India, which are the traditional basmati growing regions, and generally produce lower arsenic rice than American southern states. However, northern India has its own serious agricultural contamination challenges. Decades of intensive farming, groundwater extraction, and industrial activity in these regions have created localized contamination hotspots that independent researchers have documented with growing alarm. The arsenic levels in groundwater across parts of the Indo-Gangetic plain are a well-documented environmental crisis. Rice grown in irrigated paddies draws heavily on groundwater. Where groundwater is contaminated, rice absorbs that contamination. The EU's Rapid Alert System for Food and Feed has recorded multiple notifications involving rice products from Indian origin in recent years. KRBL and India Gate specifically do not publish independent third-party heavy metal testing data for the Irish or European market in a consumer-accessible format. For a brand charging premium prices on the basis of quality and authenticity, that transparency gap is a serious problem. You are paying a premium for a promise, not for verified data. Number 6. Uncle Ben's, now sold as Ben's Original. If there is one rice brand Irish consumers have trusted for generations, it is Uncle Ben's. The yellow packaging has been in Irish kitchens since before most of us were born. The company rebranded to Ben's Original in 2020, changing the name while changing absolutely nothing about where their rice comes from. And where it comes from is the core of the problem. Ben's Original is owned by Mars Incorporated, one of the largest privately held food corporations on Earth. Their annual revenue exceeds €50 billion. Mars also owns M&M's, Snickers, and dozens of other household brands. With that kind of scale, you would expect rigorous quality control. What you actually get is rice grown predominantly in Arkansas, Louisiana, and Texas. These are the states with the highest arsenic contamination of any rice-growing region anywhere on the planet. Research shows rice from this region contains nearly double the arsenic of California-grown rice and up to 6 times more arsenic than rice from Egypt or India. Why is American southern rice so extraordinarily contaminated? The history is genuinely damning. For over a century, cotton farmers across the southern United States used arsenic-based pesticides to control the boll weevil. 30,000 tons of arsenic-based compounds were applied to those fields over decades. That arsenic never left the soil. When cotton farming declined, the land was converted to rice paddies. Here is the truly insane part. When rice was first planted on those contaminated soils, the crops initially failed from arsenic poisoning, so agricultural scientists developed arsenic-resistant rice varieties that could survive in toxic soil. The plants absorb the arsenic but do not die from it. Instead, the poison concentrates in the grain that ends up on your plate and eventually in your body. Consumer Reports testing found Ben's original rice contained arsenic levels among the highest found anywhere, at around 200 parts per billion total arsenic. The 2025 Healthy Babies Bright Futures report confirmed that Ben's original products continue to contain concerning levels of heavy metals. Mars Incorporated has the resources to source rice from anywhere in the world. They could use California rice. They could import from India or Thailand. Instead, they continue selling Irish consumers rice from America's most contaminated farmland while charging a premium price for the privilege. Number 5. Tilda Pure Basmati and Brown Rice. Tilda is positioned at the premium end of the rice market in Ireland. The branding is sophisticated, the packaging is premium, and the price reflects that. Irish consumers choose Tilda specifically because they associate it with quality. And here is the complicated truth about Tilda. Their pure basmati products do genuinely source from the Indian subcontinent, where arsenic levels are typically lower than American-grown rice. So on that front, Tilda performs relatively better than Ben's original, but here is what Tilda does not prominently advertise. Their brown rice and whole grain ranges tell a very different story. Brown rice, regardless of where it is grown, contains significantly more arsenic than white rice from the same source. This is because arsenic concentrates in the outer bran layer of the grain, the very layer that is removed when producing white rice. The bran layer that makes brown rice nutritionally superior for fiber and vitamins is the same layer that concentrates toxic heavy metals. Tilda's brown basmati rice contains arsenic levels that are meaningfully higher than their white basmati. For years, nutritionists and health journalists encouraged Irish consumers to switch from white rice to brown rice for better fiber and blood sugar management. That advice was given without adequate consideration of the heavy metal implications. People who made the switch to brown rice thinking they were making a healthier choice may actually have been increasing their arsenic exposure. The 2025 investigation confirmed that brown rice of all brands consistently tests higher for inorganic arsenic than equivalent white rice products. Tilda's premium positioning means Irish consumers are paying significantly more for a brown rice product that, from a heavy metal contamination perspective, performs worse than cheap white rice. Number 4. Goya rice products. Goya is widely available in Irish supermarkets now, stocked particularly in stores with significant immigrant communities. The brand is enormously popular across Latin American, Caribbean and Hispanic communities in Ireland, for whom rice is not an occasional side dish, but a fundamental daily staple. And that is precisely what makes Goya's contamination profile so deeply concerning. CBS News coverage of the 2025 Healthy Babies Bright Futures investigation specifically named Goya alongside Trader Joe's and Ben's Original as brands included in contaminated samples. Goya sources rice from multiple origins, including American southern states. Their parboiled rice products, which are particularly popular, have tested for elevated arsenic levels in multiple independent studies. The parboiling process was once thought to reduce arsenic in rice. More recent research suggests the reality is more complicated, and some forms of arsenic processing may actually create more toxic variants of the compound. For immigrant families in Ireland who eat rice 2 or 3 times daily as part of their cultural food tradition, Goya's contamination levels represent compounding daily exposure far beyond what the research considered when setting safety guidelines. Those guidelines were calculated based on average European rice consumption patterns, which are a fraction of the daily intake of communities for whom rice is a staple. If your family eats rice every day, the brand and origin of that rice matters far more than if you eat it once a week. Number 3. Asheville basmati rice. Asheville is a budget basmati brand that appears in discount retailers, convenience stores, and certain supermarket chains across Ireland. It is positioned as an affordable basmati option for price-conscious shoppers who still want the perceived quality benefit of basmati over plain long grain. The pricing is notably low for a basmati product, and that low price is the first thing that should prompt you to ask serious questions. Genuine aged basmati rice from premium growing regions in India and Pakistan is not a cheap commodity. The aging process, the careful sourcing, the specific geographical origin that gives basmati its distinctive aroma and lower arsenic profile, all of that adds cost. When a basmati product is priced at the very bottom of the market, it raises an immediate and legitimate question about what corners are being cut to achieve that price point. Is this genuinely sourced basmati from traditional growing regions? Or is it a cheaper rice variety blended with or substituted for authentic basmati and labelled accordingly? EU investigations into rice authenticity have repeatedly found that the basmati category contains a disproportionate amount of adulterated or mislabeled product compared to other rice categories. This is because basmati commands a price premium, making it commercially attractive to substitute cheaper rice varieties and sell the blend as basmati. The contamination implications of this are serious. Authentic basmati from northern India and Pakistan tests lower for arsenic than many other rice varieties. Substitute rice blended in to achieve a lower price point may come from higher contamination origins, and you would have no way of knowing. Asheville does not have a prominent web presence or published quality assurance documentation that Irish consumers can readily access and verify. For a product going into Irish family kitchens every week, the absence of transparent sourcing information and independent testing data is deeply concerning. Low price should never be taken as a signal of acceptable quality when it comes to a product category with a documented toxic contamination problem. With Asheville, you are taking a gamble with your family's health to save €1 or $2 on a bag of rice. Number 2. Merchant Gourmet Brown, Red and Wild Rice. Merchant Gourmet is a brand that health-conscious Irish consumers genuinely trust and actively seek out. The products sit firmly in the premium, whole food, nutritionally aware segment of the market. The packaging is beautiful. The language on the label talks about quality, flavor, and thoughtful eating. The brown, red, and wild rice range is exactly the kind of product a parent feels good about putting in the shopping trolley. And that is precisely why this one deserves a very close look. Here is the hard science that no amount of beautiful packaging changes. Brown rice, regardless of who sells it or how premium the branding is, contains significantly more arsenic than white rice from the same growing origin. This is biological fact. Arsenic concentrates in the bran layer of the grain. White rice has that bran layer removed during milling. Brown rice retains it. The very thing that makes brown rice nutritionally superior, the bran with its fiber and B vitamins, is the same layer that holds the arsenic. Red rice and wild rice carry the same concern. These are whole grain products with their outer layers intact. Research consistently finds that brown, red, and wild rice test higher for inorganic arsenic than equivalent white rice and the 2025 Healthy Babies. Bright Future's investigation confirmed that whole grain rice products represent meaningfully higher arsenic exposure across the board. Merchant Gourmet sources their grain products from international suppliers. Their red rice is often sourced from Camargue in France, which has a better contamination profile than American southern states. But the brown rice components of their blends require the same scrutiny as any other brown rice product. The company does not publish independent heavy metal testing data on their website. For a brand charging a significant premium on the basis of health credentials, that is a serious transparency failure. The particular cruelty of this situation is that Irish consumers who switched from white rice to brown, red, and wild rice blends specifically for health reasons may have inadvertently increased their arsenic exposure. The nutritional messaging around whole grains is correct. The heavy metal implications were simply never part of that conversation. Merchant Gourmet are selling a genuinely premium product to genuinely health-motivated consumers. They owe those consumers full transparency about what their testing shows. Number 1. Tastic Rice. And at number 1, the rice brand that earns the top spot for reasons that go beyond contamination data alone and into the territory of genuine consumer deception. Tastic is a South African rice brand that has made significant inroads into the Irish market, particularly in areas with South African, Zimbabwean, and broader African diaspora communities. For many families from Southern Africa living in Ireland, Tastic is not just a rice brand, it is a taste of home. It carries cultural weight and emotional resonance that no Irish or European competitor can replicate. The brand knows this and trades on it heavily. Here is the first problem. Tastic markets itself on being a familiar, trusted, quality brand from home. What it does not prominently communicate to Irish consumers is where the rice was grown and what the heavy metal profile of that origin looks like. Tastic sources rice from multiple origins depending on production requirements, and the product reaching Irish shelves travels through a supply chain that offers very little visibility to the end consumer. South African rice-growing regions have their own documented challenges with agricultural contamination. But the more serious concern on the Irish market is that Tastic is often sold through channels with lower regulatory oversight than mainstream supermarkets. International food stores and African grocery shops are subject to the same EU food safety regulations as Tesco or Dunnes, but the practical enforcement is considerably less consistent. Now here is what makes Tastic number one on this list. The communities buying Tastic in Ireland are among the highest rice consumption households in the country. Southern African food culture centers rice as a daily staple. Tastic is not a once-a-week curry night rice. For many families buying it in Ireland, it is on the table every single day, sometimes twice. When you multiply even a moderate contamination level by daily consumption over years and decades, the cumulative heavy metal burden is categorically different from what any standard European risk assessment predicts. Those assessments were calculated on average European consumption patterns, which are a fraction of the intake in households where rice is a staple. Children in these households consume rice at a frequency and volume that puts them in a fundamentally different risk category. And yet these families receive the least information, have the least access to independent testing data, and are served by the least scrutinized part of the supply chain. Tastic's marketing in Ireland leans entirely on nostalgia, cultural identity, and brand loyalty built in another country. It offers zero independent quality assurance for the product families are trusting with their children's daily nutrition. That was not good enough before the 2025 investigations confirmed the scale of this problem. In light of what that research shows, it is completely unacceptable. Now that you know which products carry the highest risk, let me give you practical information to protect your family. The single most important variable is where your rice was grown, not the brand name, not the price, not any certification. The origin. Indian and Pakistani basmati from reputable sources tests consistently lower for arsenic than American-grown long-grain rice. Thai jasmine rice is similarly lower. Rice from the American South, meaning Arkansas, Louisiana, Texas, and Mississippi, contains the highest arsenic levels of any commercially grown rice in the world. When a label says grown in USA without specifying a region, it almost certainly means the contaminated South. Always look for a specific country of origin and favor India, Pakistan, or Thailand over unspecified American sourcing. White versus brown matters enormously. Brown rice consistently tests higher for arsenic than white rice from the same origin because arsenic concentrates in the bran layer. If you have been choosing brown, red, or wild rice specifically for health reasons, the heavy metal implications deserve serious consideration, particularly for children and daily consumers. How you cook rice can reduce arsenic by up to 60%. Cook it like pasta. Use 6 to 10 cups of water per cup of rice, boil until tender, and drain thoroughly before serving. Pre-soaking for 30 minutes to overnight and discarding the soaking water before cooking removes additional arsenic. Rinsing alone is not sufficient. Soaking and draining makes a real and measurable difference. If you have infants or toddlers, avoid rice cereal as a weaning food entirely. Use oat, barley, or multigrain infant cereals instead. Children consume 2 to 3 times more rice per kilogram of body weight than adults, and their developing brains are far more vulnerable to the neurological effects of arsenic and lead. The dose that looks acceptable for an adult can cause lasting cognitive damage in a child. The rice industry does not want any of this discussed. Irish and EU food safety bodies have published guidelines but have been slow to establish mandatory testing or labeling requirements that would force brands to disclose what is actually in their products. More than 1 in 4 rice products on supermarket shelves today exceed the safety limit regulators consider acceptable, even for infant food. This has been documented for over 20 years. The science is becoming more alarming, not less, and the industry response has been to lobby quietly and say nothing publicly. Your family deserves to know what is on their plate. The companies charging premium prices while hiding sourcing information deserve to be held accountable, and the Irish food safety system deserves real pressure from consumers and elected representatives to introduce the testing and transparency standards that would actually protect public health. If this video opened your eyes to something the rice industry hoped you would never find out, hit that like button right now and share it with every parent you know. Subscribe to the channel because there are more investigations coming into what is really on Irish supermarket shelves. Hit that notification bell so you do not miss the next one. And drop a comment below telling me which brand surprised you most, or whether you are changing how you cook rice after watching this. I read every comment. Together we can push for better standards and stop accepting that contaminated food is simply the price